Hey, what's up, everybody? You guys know I'm on vacation, but I had a little bit of an itch to talk about Bitcoin and crypto. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin cycles, where we are. I know Bitcoin's been going sideways for quite a bit, and I think maybe we have to go sideways a little bit longer. And I think I'm going to show you guys why and what we could expect maybe over the next few months. So if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get busy. So we're going to start out here with Bitcoin versus previous cycles. And what we're going to do with this is just kind of look at where we are for Bitcoin if we just take the bottom of the cycles and just put them overlay over our current price, right? And what you guys will notice when it comes to this is Bitcoin is exactly where it should be. And we've looked at this many times in this cycle to kind of give us perspective of, do we have to be maybe a little bit patient? Sometimes we may be front running previous cycles, like right here back in, March and February 2024. We might front run, but that might have to give us time to cool down to catch up where the other cycles were. And throughout this whole cycle, some cycles they go faster, some cycles they go slower at certain times. But if you look at where we are, right here in August 18th, 2024, at the time of this video, you can see Bitcoin is at the exact price that it was on the day back in 2017 when you matched it up in the cycle. Sorry, 2016 when you matched it up with the cycles, right here, right? And that's when you match up the prices to the lows. So I think when you look at this, there's a couple takeaways that I have when it comes to these cycles, right? Is they all tend to move at different times, but the general structure of the cycles tends to be the same, right? So what you'll notice is right here, right at the price right here back in March of 2024, we put in a top. What you'll notice is each cycle we put in a top at relatively the same retracement back to the previous all-time highs. Right here 2019, you can see in June we put in a top right here, right there, right? And we went sideways all the way until we caught up to where we are now, right? Obviously, our current cycle right here, we pumped a little bit faster than previous cycles, right? Like 2019, went up too fast, had to correct for a long time to catch up to where we normally do. Right here, right? We pumped up a little bit too fast, maybe front run the halving a little bit. We had to correct to where we currently are. And what you'll notice in 2017, we also went to right at where this retracement level was, and we had to have a long correction, right? Mostly a time capitulation, kind of like right now, right? Bitcoin's not down a lot, right? I think a lot of the apathy and sadness in the market is because the altcoin market's not doing well, not necessarily Bitcoin. Just need a time capitulation. 2019, current cycle, you can see they all put in local tops right at this exact same point, right? I don't think that's a coincidence. And what you'll notice is, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think we can use this to maybe give us a perspective and maybe, give us a little bit of patience. Right here, when did the previous two cycles actually break these highs? At around the same time. Again, right? You can see right here back in October, about mid-October, right? The yellow and the blue cycle both broke through those previous all-time highs, right? At this exact same point. If you look at where we are now, right? It's October 18th. You can see that we did a little bit of different thing in both these, right? This one we kind of, 2017, we kind of had a slow, gradual grind up into that point. And then in 2020, we kind of just chopped sideways for, what was this? About 2 months, right? In August and September, before then having a little bit more of a steeper impulse up into that October point. So I think what we can take from this is we have no idea what the short-term price action is going to be. I'm not going to sit here and try to predict what the short-term price action is going to be. But if we just look at previous cycles, maybe we shouldn't expect Bitcoin to blast through those all-time highs until maybe the beginning or middle of October, which is not that far away at this point, right? We're talking about, a month and a half, 2 months up until that point. So, right here, they broke through at the same point. We're at the same point now, right? We continue to follow the previous cycles. Let's just do it. Now, what I think is also interesting is you can see that the two previous cycles also put in a major top before a big correction. Like this was about a 40% correction for Bitcoin back in 2016, or sorry, in 2020. And this was I think about a 60% correction back in 2017, right? You can see that they both put in a major peak right at the end of Q4, right? So right here, December and January, right? So early January, early December, major peak. So what this tells me is if we're going to follow previous cycles, and this kind of goes into the left transmitted peak, are we going to not break out until October, right? Maybe after the Fed cuts rates, if it's for a good reason, and then put in a major peak at the end of Q4. It would make sense. And why would that make sense? One, that's what the previous cycles did, right? Breakout in October, major peak in end of Q4. But it also makes sense if you actually look at the Bitcoin monthly returns. September is usually sideways or crappy for Bitcoin, right? And we'll look at this a little bit further in the next chart, but you can see September is usually crappy for Bitcoin, right? On average, down 5%. So maybe September is kind of choppy and boring and sucky as far as for traders. But then if you look at Q4, October plus 23%, November plus 47%, and December plus 5%. So, and when December is good, December is really, really good, right? Especially in halving years, 47% and 30% in halving years in December. So Q4 tends to be the best time for Bitcoin. September is kind of crappy, okay? So maybe the rest of October and September we can continue to chop, and I'll show you why, right? If we actually look at also the previous cycles at around the same time, so you can see right here, we're in the middle of August, right? We've kind of had a little move up off the lows. We put in a cycle low, around the beginning of August, which is kind of normal. If you actually look at previous cycles, right here, back in September of 2020, you can see right here, September of 2020, we came up and we put in this last low before the move up in the beginning of September, right? And what you can see is, what did we do? We talked about this just a second ago. What did we do? We ended up shopping sideways throughout the rest of September, early October, and then in the middle of October, right, you could see Bitcoin started to absolutely go nuts and finally break through this peak, right, that we've been struggling with for quite a bit, right? In October, boom, started to break through. And then October, December, into this point, we put in a major peak. And then this was a big correction for Bitcoin, and altcoins actually got annihilated in this correction. This was about a 31% correction. Altcoins got annihilated in that correction. But actually, there was a little bit of a switch right there, okay? And that's what we'll talk about next. So, cycle low in September, about a month and a half of sideways chop crabby price action for Bitcoin. Maybe what we could expect right now. Let's look at the previous cycle. Also the same thing. Peak, right? Just like we looked at with the fractals. Down until August 2nd, right? So on August 2nd, boom, we hit a low. And then what you'll notice, same thing, right? Chop, crappy price action this was actually a little bit longer. This was about 2 months of chop, crappy price action. But what you'll notice, after that chop, crappy price action in September, in early October, and then as we get into late October and November, boom, that's when we finally break through there and we get a massive impulse to the upside into Q4. And then what? A major peak at the end of December, right? So what I think is interesting is if we just look at our current price action, we go back over here, okay? We just put in a major cycle low in the beginning of August, very similar to 2016, okay? Now remember, in 2020, we went major cycle low in September. So what I think is possible right here. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here, guys. I'm just going to put that out there. I don't know what's going to happen in the short term. I don't want to talk about short term stuff. I'm going to guess that this general range right here, probably, I mean, I would guess that it's probably going to be slightly boring until at least the middle of October. Okay, we'll put it like that. Because that's what's happened in the past, right? Is after we put in a low, whether this August 5th is the low, or maybe we go a little bit lower, right? Maybe we go to the mid 40Ks at some point. I don't know. I would love it to be able to pick up some more. But probably if we're going off based off previous cycles, this time period right here would be pretty boring. Okay. Basically, September would be boring, and then the beginning of October would be boring, because that's what we saw in 2016, and that's what we saw in 2020, as we just went over, right? This is not based off feelings. It's just based off of what's happened in the past, okay? If I'm biased, I would love if Bitcoin just went straight up right now, okay? But I'm just going to go based off what happened in the past, and in 2020, in 2016, we saw about a month and a half of, after we put in the low, of chop, okay? So I'm going to expect a little bit of chop here. Maybe we make a lower low. Maybe we kind of just go sideways here. We could actually make even an impulse back to the highs. I should probably expand this box up. But I expect probably a little bit of chop in here for at least a month, okay? Just based off the past and based off of how typically September is actually the worst month for Bitcoin typically, and then Q4 is good, okay? And then what we typically see is a high into December, okay? Where is that going to be the cycle peak, which is the left translated cycle, or is that going to be just a mid-cycle peak like the previous cycles? I don't know. Probably depends on a few macro things. But let's talk about a few other things. So this is the hash ribbon signal. And this is what keeps me thinking that we're going to follow the cycles, because, guys, every single time, right? And this goes into the question of, Jordan, why do you think we're going to go up? Why do you think that this is the cycle top is in and we're just going to go straight down? Well, the hash ribbon SPY signal, okay? And we've talked about this a few times. Every time this signal has gone off, it's been a good time to buy Bitcoin, okay? On pullbacks, not necessarily buy signal buy, but if you get a buy signal and you don't make a new high and you get pullbacks, typically a good time, right? And sometimes when this goes off, is like it went off over here in August, you get a little bit of downside, but then you get a little bit of a drawn out period here, right? So in August, hash ribbon SPY signal, we went down and then sideways for 2 months before ultimately making new highs, okay? So far, we went down and sideways for about a month, which maybe means we get another month and a half, like we're saying right here, right? Sometimes it just goes off and it just pumps, right? Sometimes it goes off and it just pumps. Sometimes it goes off and it just pumps. Sometimes it goes off and it just pumps. But like we did over here in August of last year, it's August right now. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. And sometimes, like down here, right, January 2019, big dump, sideways for 2 months, and then move up, right? So you'll notice that sometimes. Sometimes it just pumps. Sometimes you get it. If it's at a peak, you get a dump first, sideways. Okay, so hash ribbon SPY signal keeps me long-term bullish. And that's kind of, we got the hash ribbon SPY signal, right? Got to respect it. Sometimes it doesn't play out right away. Sometimes it takes some patience, okay? But you can see each time this has gone off, it's been a good time to buy some Bitcoin. Obviously, the one time we went lower was the COVID crash. So you could predict a black swan. If we get a black swan, it's still a good buying opportunity. Right here, 2019, it went off, we pumped, and then COVID crash, right? Pandemic. You can't predict those things. We broke the low, right? But we recovered back above that in a matter of weeks, okay? So that was still a good signal. All these other ones, fantastic signals. You can't go wrong there, all right? So that's kind of like the Bitcoin outlook. Altcoins, I think for me, here's how I'm looking at altcoins, guys. And there's a few altcoins where I think look much, much better than other altcoins. I'm not going to talk about them specifically just because there's no plus EV and there's no gain of talking about individual altcoins. So let's just talk about the whole altcoin market real quick. Bitcoin dominance is at an interesting point. All right, we've talked about this trend line for over a year now, waiting for it to eventually hit. And you can see that we did hit it just 2 weeks ago, right? And you can see, right, so obviously we started a big downtrend here, and you can see that we've actually been sitting right at this trend line. If you just zoom in here on Bitcoin dominance, we've been sitting here for 2 weeks now, okay? If we zoom in, you'll see that we are finding, it's not like perfect, but we are finding some resistance right near this trend line, right? Rejection, 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 rejection. I don't know which way this is going to break, guys, okay? I don't know which way this is going to break. I don't know if this is going to break to the upside and we're going to see Bitcoin continue to be daddy. I don't know if this is going to break to the downside. You're going to see altcoins go absolutely berserk, okay? I don't know which way this is going to go. I think being prepared for both is good. Here's what I'll say about altcoins going like nuts. And if you're scared of missing out on altcoins, I get it, right? You don't want to keep holding the altcoins because they keep going lower, right? You also want to be in the altcoins in case they go parabolic. I guess it comes back down to this, all right? If you're going to buy altcoins, make sure there's some fundamental reason other than you want price to go up to hold that altcoin. So at least if it goes lower, you still believe in something about it, right? The other thing is this. Don't buy the altcoin unless you believe in it. Number two, what I've seen every single cycle, and we kind of forget about it sometimes, is altcoins typically don't go parabolic unless Bitcoin is in price discovery. So I'm going to continue to stick by that rule. I still think Bitcoin is king, right, until it goes into price discovery. I think when you see Bitcoin go into price discovery, that's typically the signal that altcoins are going to start outperforming, right? Bitcoin breaks through all-time highs, and then altcoins outperform after Bitcoin's in price discovery. That's what happened back in 2020. We could probably look at that real quick, and we probably should. We probably should. Let me just clear this off. And let me just bring up total 3 real quick, because I think this is important. I think a lot of people are confused right now. Like, should I be in altcoins? Should I not be in altcoins? It's a lot of confusion right now. So let's go look at the previous cycle, and I'll show you guys what I mean. It's a tough call right now. But here's the thing. If we just mark off, I'm trying to make this like a little bit better here. Back down here, right, where Bitcoin's all-time high was. Let's just mark that off, all right? What you'll notice is right here, altcoins came up from the COVID crash low, right? But they didn't really follow Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin broke all-time highs right here. What you'll notice is altcoins lagged, okay, significantly actually, Bitcoin, until Bitcoin blasted through all-time highs and hit this and got near this first peak, right? And then when Bitcoin got to this first peak right here, you can see altcoins, while Bitcoin was going parabolic in price discovery, altcoins kind of lacked, right? Altcoins actually slightly continued down while Bitcoin broke through into price discovery. And then when Bitcoin hit that first peak after price discovery, that's when you saw a rotation, right? You'll see this rotation right here, where Bitcoin actually pulled back and altcoins went up, right? So if it's anything like previous cycles, and it might be different this time. Maybe this time's different, right? We are at a resistance for Bitcoin dominance. That's why I'm kind of hedged both ways. But if it's like last cycle, Bitcoin breaks through all-time highs, pulls back, that's when there's a rotation into altcoins. And that's when altcoins significantly outpace Bitcoin, right? So I think when it comes to altcoins, if you're going to buy altcoins, which is fine, just make sure you're not buying on pumps, right? You're buying on significant capitulation events where people are forced sells. There's something about that altcoin that you have some conviction in, where you're not just going to panic sell if it goes, 10 to 15% lower, 20% lower, 25% lower, 50% lower. And just remember that typically altcoins don't have altcoin season until Bitcoin breaks through all-time highs, right? And I think that's going to keep you grounded. That's not going to make you listen to all these crypto, YouTube videos that are calling altcoin season every day, right? I sometimes I pull up YouTube and it's like altcoin season today, and it's like, typically that doesn't happen at this point in the cycle. Typically we need Bitcoin to get people interested, right? Bitcoin to get everyone, oh my God, yes, let's go, man. Bitcoin's an all-time highs. And then you see an altcoin season, right? So stay grounded. I don't think there's a rush. And I've been saying this the last few weeks. I don't think there's a rush to be in anything. I think if it's anything like last cycles, like we talked about, September could be boring / down. The beginning of October could be boring / down, right? Which would probably give you a little bit better opportunities on altcoins. But then typically Q4 is really, really good. So that's kind of today's video, guys. And I want to make today's video, I'm on vacation, but I had an itch to kind of help you guys with patience a little bit, right? And just to kind of look at where we are, what happened last times. Nothing's different. We're exactly where we should be. Might take a little bit more patience, so just be prepared for it mentally, right? Don't get caught up in the hoopla, jupla of one day we're going into, Bitcoin's going nuts, altcoin season imminent, and then the next day we dump and, it's recession and everything's going down 99%. Don't get caught up in the day-to-day. It's to distract you from the bigger picture. Ignore those crazy intraday calls. That's what we've been doing for quite a bit, or at least for Bitcoin, for months, is ignore the day-to-day calls. Bitcoin's been in the same range for 6 months, which is normally what it does at this point in the cycle. All right. So I'm out of here. Peace out. Have a great day, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Let me know in the comments if you like this video. All right. Peace.